Hello my fluff chuck and chums, and welcome to another video. Thank you very much for picking up on the channel. Today we're going to look at dry fly fishing, but it's going to be in a couple of parts as there is a lot to cover. Some 25 years ago I did cut my teeth fishing on the rivers in the northeast, fishing for brown trout obviously and the odd sea trout, but the technique that stuck with me the most was fishing the dries. The visual aspect of fishing dries and the adrenaline of catching a fish on the dry fly was just something that I couldn't shake off. It wasn't until a couple of years later that somebody actually introduced me to Stillwaters, and I must admit, when I first seen Stillwater flies, I was quite shocked. I was shocked at the sheer size of them, the colour, the gaudiness. I wouldn't exactly say that I was a purist, but seeing the flies that were presented to me that I would have to use on the Stillwaters was a lot to take in at first, just like it is for any beginner to any sport. But we got there in the end, and I realised what needed to be for the Stillwaters, the techniques, the methods that you had to pick up on. Anyway, so in the videos what I'm aiming to do, it's mainly for beginners. It's only my way of fishing dry flies, things that I've picked up, methods that I use. I'm not a professional. I just go out and learn as I go like everybody else does. But the aim of the videos is to shortcut this for newcomers to the sport. So what we're going to begin with today is the actual tackle that you would use on Stillwaters when dry fly fishing. Before I go into the details of that, I will say the standard rod seems to be, or on Stillwater, seems to be a 7-weight rod, matching with a 7-weight reel, matching with a 7-weight line. You can fish dry flies this way. You can use that equipment if you want to. It will affect how successful you are with dry flies on certain days, but it's not to say that you can't catch fish on that setup, which really in the dry fly scheme of things is quite a heavy setup, a 7-weight. So my preferred tackle for Stillwater setup is I tend to use a 5-weight rod, sometimes 6-weight, but 5-weight I find is really good for presentation, and it's light enough. Most of the fish that you're going to catch on the Stillwaters in the main are going to be fish around 2 to 3 pounds. I think most people will agree with that. You are going to have days where you may pick up a bigger fish, but this tackle can still easily deal with that. What we're going to start with is the lines. So the line that you're going to use, what I prefer to use, is a weight forward floating line. So you would use this in a 5-weight to complement the 5-weight rod and of course a 5-weight reel. You can also use a double taper floating fly line. This line carries most of the weight in the middle or the belly of the line. It means the end of the line, which you attach your tippet to, is a lot finer. Therefore, when it touches down on the water, it touches down a lot more gently and it doesn't spook fish. It is a very popular line on the rivers, but I also use it on the Stillwaters, as I say. On the days when the trout are being a little bit picky and the water's flat calm, that's when I would normally use my double taper fly line. It gives you delicate presentation, still a good casting line, still easy to cast, so don't worry about anything regarding the casting side of things. It casts exactly the same, it just lands just that little bit lighter on the water, which causes less disturbance. So on the rod side of things, I tend to use 5 to 6-weight rods. Mainly the 5-weight rods, to be honest, but I do have 3 rods. One is a dedicated 6-weight, but the other 2 are 5 to 6 weights. I do go for different butts on these rods, which I'm going to show you now. So one rod, as you can see, one rod doesn't have a fighting butt. It's quite flat, and my other rod has a small fighting butt. It's only 1/2 inch, guys. Both of these rods are 9 foot, which is quite standard for a 5-weight rod. You can go a little bit shorter if you like, but they tend to be more for the rivers. I think on a Stillwater, I probably wouldn't go below a 9-foot rod, and you'll be really surprised how good a line that you can put out with these. Even though it's a 5-weight line, trust me, you can cast some distance with these rods, especially after you've been used to using a 7-weight. On the subject of reels, basically any reel that will hold a 5-weight line will do you for the dry fly fishing, to be honest. You don't have to go out and spend a fortune. If you're going to be using a dry fly rod and reel, a dedicated setup, I wouldn't suggest spending a lot of money until you decide that it's a little niche that you would want to be into. Me personally, my niche is dry fly fishing, so I do spend a decent amount of money on my dry fly setup. It's purely choice. It won't help you catch any more fish, but as I say, it's whatever you're comfortable with and what your budget is. Just going back to the subject of fly lines again. As I say, you can use the weight forward. You don't have to buy a double taper line if you don't want to, but I would suggest going down and using the 5-weight setup. Now, one thing I do want to say, if you're on catch and release, it can be a little bit more of a lengthy battle with the fish to land it. So you have to be mindful of that and weigh up if your fishing is detrimental to the fish itself and it going back in a good state. So you have to be mindful and make that decision yourself. If you think that you're fighting the fish too long on a 5-weight and the fish are struggling to go back, because bear in mind the temperatures will be rising, just go back to your 7-weight and fish the same way. It's very minimal, the advantages. I just personally do like to fish a 5-weight because I feel like I can give better presentation of the fly. I can use smaller flies, and it's just my way of fishing. But please do be mindful of the fish's welfare. Another thing that I suggest that you should invest in is some tapered leaders or tippets. To anyone new or beginning fly fishing, to avoid any confusion, the tippet and the leader is the same thing. Basically, what the tapered leader does is it gives you a really good presentation when you're presenting a very light fly. If you're presenting a fly down to say 18-20, you need something that's going to really turn that fly over, because that's important for presentation. You don't want the fly landing in a heap with the line behind it. So the tapered leaders, I would normally go for a 9-foot tapered leader, something that goes down to around 4 pounds, 5 pounds, and then I would add to that a 4 to 5 pound tippet. Obviously I would go 4 pound if it was a 5 pound tapered leader, just to taper it down nicely. But again, please check with the fishery, check the fishery rules, because a lot of fisheries nowadays, and probably rightly so, suggest that you use 6 pound minimum on their waters, just to prevent snappages and fish trailing around with hooks and leaders hanging from them, which is, it's not good for the fish, the lake, and it's a bit unsightly. So let's say on the Stillwater you're fishing, there is a minimum of 6 pound break and strain for your leader. So what we would do then is you would buy a tapered leader that goes down to probably 8 pounds or so, and then add 6 pound fluorocarbon to that. Now I'm saying fluorocarbon, some people may disagree. Some people may say you should be using copolymer, which is a different line altogether. Copolymer pretty much sits on the surface, it's a lighter line. However, I have always used fluorocarbon for my dry fly fishing because I want that line to sink, which we're going to get into a little bit later on when I talk about techniques. But fluorocarbon is denser and it will go under the water, which is what we want. We don't want the fly line being on the surface. But as I say, that's for another video. I don't want to get into that at the moment. So basically what I use for my setup is that tapered leader. To that tapered leader, which would be 9 foot, regardless of the break and strain that I'm going to use, I would add another 6 foot to that 9 foot. 6 foot leader, which is long enough in my opinion. You can go longer if you want to keep your fly line well away from spooky fish, but adding that 6 foot to the 9 foot leader, that's going to give you 15 foot. You're going to be able to turn that over a lot easier than just using straight through leader from fly line to end of 15 foot. That would be difficult to turn over. The tapered leader, however, will aid turnover massively, and then there's only 6 feet of fluorocarbon for it actually to turn over, even if you've got a small fly on the end. And there are techniques that you can use after casting that will pull the fly and turn it over nicely, which I will go into in more depth in another video. The thing is with dry fly fishing, it is an in-depth method. It's not cut and dry, if you pardon the pun. It's an in-depth method. There's a lot to it. It's not complicated. So if you are a beginner, please don't sit and go, oh, there's too much. This is going to be too much to remember. I can't do all this. It is really simple when you get the hang of it, and it is really worthwhile. That's something I will say from the off. The takes, the visualized takes that you get from taking a trout from the top of the water is amazing. And I'm sure any of you who've been fishing a long time and you've done this will agree with me. it's second to none, even to buzzer fishing. I do love buzzer fishing. I love the take. Buzzers and nymphs, secondary to me. Dry fly, top of the board every single time. And I have had some cracking fish taken off the top on flies as small as 20, 22. And you will be amazed how strong a size 22 hook can be when it gets lodged in the jaw of a trout. It's amazing. So, as I've said, it is going to be in a few parts. So today I just wanted to talk to you about what tackle you're going to need, what size line you're going to need, the rods, the reels, something comfortable, something within your budget. Go for 5-6 weight rods. That'll give you a little bit more presentation, and you are going to be casting a lot throughout the day, and you do want a rod that's not too heavy. It needs to be quite light, but it's something that I would suggest trying. We're coming into the season for it. You're going to have a great time trying with it. In the next episodes of this section, I will be showing you everything from the techniques to present the fly down to the flies themselves and how to prepare your leader for to be presented to a fish, basically to give you the best chances in flat conditions, in riffled conditions, choppy conditions, which fly to choose. I can go through all of that and give you a head start onto something or onto a path that I'm sure that you're going to absolutely love. So that's it for now. Thank you very much for tuning into the video. I hope you liked the little introduction that I put together for you. I think it epitomizes spring and what we've got to look forward to. And I will see you in the next video. So thank you very much.